Thank you and good morning. I am Donna Wheatley, a commander with the Metropolitan Fire Brigade, and I too would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land we're upon, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, lands that were never ceded. I'm a commander with the MFB and the immediate past president of the board of WAFA, Women and Firefighting Australasia, an association first formed 15 years ago following the Women in Firefighting gathering in Sydney, championed by Dr. Marilyn Childs. It delivers a biennial conference for members, the sixth of which was delivered in Wellington, New Zealand last September. WAFA is an association that aims to promote, support and network women. It works towards the mission, as above, and WAFA currently has 345 individual members and 10 agency members. It delivers the Australasian Conference as well as monthly communications that promote, support and network women in the fire and emergency services. It also delivers a mentoring program, amplification on social media and acknowledgement with various award nominations and presentations. There are various local events and we also provide support to organisations working to increase gender and inclusion within their jurisdiction. So the ripple effects of all this are incalculable and priceless. So I'm here to engage you about the value of WAFA by way of exploring the outcome statement of the 2018 WAFA Conference. I'll take you through the why, what and how of the outcome statement, look at some important definitions and intersections for this work, share some reflections from the conference and recommendations that the outcome statement provides, and take a look at this from a few important perspectives for you, for me and for us. We can continue the conversation at the WAFA stand in the expo over lunchtime, and I know that we're going to have a little bit of time at the end for conversation. We might have time to squeeze in a question at the end of mine. So this is the first time that WAFA has provided detailed documented findings and proceedings of the conference. It was the sixth conference to be delivered and attracted the largest delegate numbers and greatest sector support to date. The conference ran over 3 days, comprising a hands-on training day and 2 days of presentations and workshops delivered by more than 30 presenters. I'd like to acknowledge Kate Hill. She's an SO with FENS and the current WAFA board chair, and she led the conference organising committee to those wonderful outcomes last year in New Zealand. The board aspired to create a legacy document that could communicate the value of the conference to people beyond the delegates who co-created the energy with the presenters and the experience that came from those 3 days. And this is no mean feat because the articulation of the how and the why, or the vibe as the castle loans us, is elusive. The value is usually highly personal, often intangible and well beyond technical. It creates energy. So in working with Naomi Bailey, who was the consultant who produced the outcome statement, and talking with some other people, I came across a quote by Brené Brown, and anybody who knows me knows that her work is really fundamental to my leadership journey. She says that connection is the energy that is created between people when they feel seen, heard and valued, when they can give and receive without judgment. So this idea of connection that brings the energy we're referring to can only happen when people feel a sense of belonging. So with a curiosity of this concept of the energy of WAFA conferences and the need to better articulate the value to people we want to engage more, we looked at the outcome statement that had been produced for the Diversity and Disaster Conference held at the MCG last year. This was what we felt could help us, and I'd like to acknowledge that Naomi Bailey is with us today. She produced the outcome statement for us after running the process, a very detailed process that I'll go into across before and across and after the conference. I also want to acknowledge Dr. Deborah Parkinson, who's not here today, but she really championed for us to get sponsorship through Emergency Management Australia, and they sponsored this work. The outcome statement summarises the conference insights for use in the development of policy and procedures. Insights about current best practice, future directions, actions and opportunities for women in firefighting. So it is a legacy document that communicates the experience, priorities and evidence about women in firefighting across our region and makes recommendations to further the work. It seeks to capture those insights from the conference in a document that can be used by attendees and firefighting and emergency management participants in their ongoing conversation about firefighting expertise, women's innovation, contribution and leadership. There's an increasing attention paid to the ways in which gender impacts on recruitment and retention. However, WAFA offers a unique opportunity for women firefighters to gather together and share knowledge, skills and experiences. Capturing outcomes from the conference is critical to building the evidence base around the impacts of WAFA conferences. While the insights from these events give us rich information about the particular experience of women in firefighting, firefighting does not exist in a vacuum. So an active body of research on women in male-dominated industries forms an important context, as does insights from existing work on gender and disaster. Recognition of this broader context shaped the methods employed to develop the outcome statement. The project used qualitative interviews, delegate feedbacks and an informant approach to generate data on which the outcome statement is based. This approach relied on the observations of 6 participants, each of who had experience in either firefighting, women in firefighting, academic research into diversity in firefighting, or human resources expertise in the emergency management sector. In addition to those participants, qualitative interview techniques were used to engage with presenters and seek their understanding of the impact of the conference. The data from these methods was thematically analysed, and the outcome statement area of focus reflects the findings. This qualitative approach ensures the statement reflects multiple voices in attendance, captures the reach of the conference across research and practice, and represents and reflects the challenge of accurately communicating the spirit of the conference, its strengths and ambition back to the firefighting community. So the outcome statement defines some important terms within the debate about diversity and the way in which they intersect. So equality presumes that difference is unimportant. An equality statement might be, we're all equal, we're all the same. And equity acknowledges that practical realities make access to opportunities unequal. Responding equitably includes recognising difference, the potential strengths and insight that difference brings, and reflecting on how our institutions, values or current frameworks inherently reflect the qualities of privileged groups. An equity statement might be, we're not all the same, and because of this we make unique contributions and require different strategies to ensure access to opportunity. So linking inequality and inequity to privilege unpacks the ways in which current systems reflect our past and the ways in which the past powerfully shapes our present, and the institutional story told about what works, who is right for the job and why. A privilege statement might be, privilege doesn't mean you've not worked hard to get where you are, it just means that your skin colour, gender or sexual identity, disability or culture have not been the reason you have had to work harder. Actions to address privilege are actions that impact on equality and inequity. Adopting definitions of equality and equity that acknowledge the link between privilege and culture is a powerful first step in correctly identifying the challenge facing fire and emergency services. Diversity is often used to describe an institutional push to recruit, retain and promote people from minority groups so that our services better reflect the community that they serve. Addressing diversity often involves removing barriers that are discriminatory, developing recruitment campaigns that are nuanced and directed at minority communities, and developing organisational capacity to ensure non-discriminatory workplaces. Women firefighters are a diverse group, and that diversity is a strength. Representation at the conference from every minority demonstrates the ways in which services are working towards better representing the communities. The conference found that recruitment, retention and fostering of women is not an issue of diversity, it's an issue of representation. So women make up 50% of the population, yet the representation in firefighting and emergency services is terribly low. The number of delegates attending the conference and their roles at all levels of service, from new recruits through to commissioner, demonstrated the capacity, enthusiasm and potential of women in firefighting, suggesting underrepresentation of women reflects something about retention, recruitment and promotion processes. The conference recognised that leadership is a quality, not a rank, and that it was difficult to progress up the ranks if there were no women in leadership roles, showing how it could be done. The conference recognises the value of different leadership styles, mentoring and sponsorship. So technical leadership, which answers current challenges with existing knowledge and fixes the many problems faced every day, is critical to the success of our service. And it's a familiar style of leadership and one that our services do well. Transformational leadership styles address a different type of challenge. The conference recognises that as we move to address challenges that are complex, multifactorial and require us to generate new knowledge and information, we need leadership that can be adaptive, that can reflect on the current structures and ask, have we constructed the challenge in the right way? Are we using the right tools? The types of challenges we now face require leaders who can change their mind, listen to a broad range of knowledge holders, leaders who are willing to be changed by the work that they're doing, and leaders who can work in the optimum zone of discomfort to progress the change that is already happening in our institutions. Transformational leaders can work on continuous improvement and on problems that do not have a direct fix, but rather require sustained, engaged, ongoing change. Delegates identified that they already lead from their current positions, that leadership may be formally recognised with a senior role or informally assumed by setting the tone in a brigade, influencing culture or inspiring other women. Often a woman firefighter carries a double load when it comes to leadership. She may lead as a professional, demonstrating technical excellence, and lead personally as the first woman of her rank or only woman in her squad. This often involves addressing discrimination or sexist culture and behaving as an example to other women and girls. While women spoke about the pride in belonging to fire and emergency services and of the many men who were friends and allies, there was also an acknowledgement that sometimes that extra load was costly, both personally and professionally. The WAFA Conference provides a space for women in emergency services to come together. They describe feeling a sense of belonging. Delegates noted how much they valued this opportunity, especially the opportunity to spend time with other women firefighters, to reflect on common experiences, the power of hearing from women leaders and sharing with peers and colleagues. The outcome statement identifies numerous strengths in casting vision for the future of women in firefighting. The knowledge holders and powerful figures in attendance at the conference reflected the vision and influence of WAFA. The contribution to shaping direction in emergency management, to increase capacity to meet future challenges and to influence institutional settings are powerful strategic roles of the conference. It's important to note that while the problem of underrepresentation is stark in the services, the representation of women in public life is a problem broader than firefighting. Women are underrepresented in public life and at all levels of leadership. The conference noted that much can be learned by adapting and adopting successful progress on gender equity in other fields. It's noted that many emergency services are currently engaged in formal review processes to increase gender equity and address sexism, including sexual harassment and assault in their organisations, and the conference encouraged all stakeholders to embrace these processes and engage with the findings and recommendations. Firefighters have traditionally had a strong union representation, which advocates for the wage protection and conditions to protect workers in the risks that they take every day when providing these essential services. The union movement across Australia has been critical in the fight for women's equality at work, and WAFA calls on the firefighters' unions in Australasia to support their members, including women, to ensure equality of protection under the law and equity of opportunity in service. A significant portion of the program addressed what it's like to be a woman in firefighting. Presentations on the lived experience were demonstrated by a deep pride in service and the personal confidence won through hard work, building technical knowledge. The pride and technical skill accompanied an acknowledgement of isolation, navigating a culture dominated by men and masculinity, and on occasion open sexism, sexual harassment and assault. These all have an impact on health and well-being, adding to the inherent stresses of the role. Experiencing and addressing discrimination was another way in which women worked harder at the same job. However, overwhelmingly, delegates differentiated between the behaviours of some people and the pride they had in their institutions. Women leaders often carry a double load in leadership. While no one woman speaks on behalf of all women, insights from current women leaders reflected in this outcome statement can contribute to the strategic planning for the organisational change that is coming in emergency management. It was acknowledged that all women leaders risk a leadership tax that manifests as the personal cost of confronting power and being the first only woman leading at that level in their organisation. This cost includes isolation, the cost to family time, including child rearing and personal relationships, being targeted as the problem rather than the person identifying the problem, Burnout, including burnout due to being constantly asked to speak for or on behalf of all women in their organisation. Demotion, firing or workplace bullying. Vicarious trauma and post-traumatic stress injury or disorder. As much as women can do things to improve their lived experience, our institutions are also capable of improvement. Institutions are responsible for the authorising environments in which women have a qualitatively different experience of service. The outcome statement should be considered as an integrated document. The practical steps influencing multiple domains. Leadership for gender equity, improved recruitment, reduction of discrimination and harassment will all impact on the lived experience. We work towards representation for inclusive emergency management, and some services are engaged in processes to recruit more women to ensure representative numbers in their ranks. There is currently a lack of integrated, thoughtful, well-researched communication tools and strategies that correctly identify the problem of recruitment of women and promote the broad range of fire and emergency services role. The outcome statement digs into this in detailed practical steps for recruitment. So change requires leadership. Contribution of what makes a good leader came from many different voices at the conference: academics, serving leaders, volunteers, community representatives and the private sector. Leadership in the services, particularly leadership as a quality rather than a rank, was characterised by authenticity. Authenticity included, on the one hand, advanced technical skills and on the other hand, advanced cultural skills to engage with the continuous improvement required to foster positive institutional culture. Research shows that when women are present in leadership positions at the decision-making table, they positively influence productivity, contribute to durable solutions and make critical contributions to high-performing teams. It was also acknowledged at the conference, however, that women are not always allies. Pulling up the ladder, once a woman reaches senior leadership, happens often enough that there's an idiom for it. This unhealthy competition is present at every rank, and the conference encouraged recognition of this phenomenon and refers to the section on representation to remind us that no one woman speaks for all women. So we need transformational leadership. At the conference, leadership for change was characterised as leadership that cultivates, attracts and retains the best and brightest. These leaders had technical excellence and were also willing to listen, to engage with research, to acknowledge culture and to hold staff accountable to respect each other. The following qualities emerged as critical for managing the change that our services are facing and were often referred to as authentic leadership. So the courage to stand up, call out and hold accountable individuals behaving in a sexist manner. The ethics to ask value-based questions of existing practices. The humility to acknowledge past mistakes, recognise their impact and change practice. The discipline to continue to frame the challenge over the time it takes to effect institutional change. The organisational support to act to address institutional discrimination, including sexism, and strength and vulnerability. It's no longer sufficient only to be strong. Our organisations must be able to be vulnerable and acknowledge the impacts we experience when exposed to the trauma, grief and loss inherent in the work we do. There is value in recognising those things that our institutions that we value, that we want to hold on to, and those things that we want to change. We know we need more courageous institutions. When women firefighters already managing the normalised physical and emotional stresses of the job are faced with harassment and discrimination at work, it has a complex impact. When the harassment and discrimination is acknowledged and dealt with well, with perpetrators being held accountable, a belief in justice, fairness and equitable institutions is bolstered. When it's ignored, minimised or dealt with poorly in the workplace, it can be felt as institutional betrayal. This betrayal reinforces privilege, compounds secondary trauma and blames the victim. Courageous institutions have been shown to protect health and wellbeing. So you're in the room because you too support our mission, even if you didn't know it before now. You're at least interested in knowing more about the challenge and the opportunity of moving gender inclusion to the new norm in the fire and emergency services. And this work has gained your attention, at least enough to compete with urban planning next door. So far, we've talked about the lived experience of women in your sector, of the imperative for authentic leadership, which requires we step into our vulnerability if we're to take on this adaptive challenge, and the need for us to co-create a courageous institution. These things can all conspire to make us feel a little uncomfortable. Hearing that it's not an easy fix, looking squarely at the problems that we still have, and maybe you haven't heard so directly from women before, and honestly and courageously considering how you've been part of maintaining the status quo in the past can all be challenging. This idea of privilege can get our hackles up. I know it happens with me when I'm directly confronted with my white privilege living in Australia. And it's okay, in fact it's good, because to feel uncomfortable provides the disequilibrium we need for deep adaptive change. So stay with it, because they're only feelings, the other F word, but they tell us important things because our body is a barometer. I know the discomfort of the sense of shame I felt when I was made aware that people in my crew, those I felt most responsible for as the officer, didn't feel safe or felt they didn't really belong. Now, this is women and men. Belonging applies to all of our people. I truly want all people to feel safe and be safe. I want my team to thrive, not merely survive. I want them to feel loved and accepted as who they are, not as though they have to fit in to get along or deny who they are in order to be allowed into the cool clique. When I hear that we've let them down, I feel ashamed and sad, sometimes guilty or angry or helpless. And none of these are fun feelings to be around, but I stay with them in order to learn more. The work I do with WAFA and beyond is the action I take to improve belonging in the fire services. I aim to move beyond diversity and inclusion to true belonging. True belonging doesn't require you change who you are, it requires that you be who you are, when no one has to fit in to feel safe or accepted, or to wear that armour that's often needed in emergency response when they return to station, which is meant to be our home from home, or to shrink or leave their authentic self at home for fear of rejection or judgment. So as a firefighter, I was exposed to organised, systemic and accepted sexism, and I believed that that's what I had to do in order to fit in. I was told in 100 subtle and direct ways that these outdated, harmful behaviours were how we do things around here. And I'm actually quite embarrassed to recount the ways in which I tried to fit into that culture. Within a few weeks of my time on station, I was exposed to extreme behaviour. In particular, an early memory was about being on move up outside of my station, a space that I knew, and being on a truck with people that I didn't know so well. And we arrived at the other station and one of the three men on the truck put hardcore pornography on in the mess room that we gathered in. And neither of the other two men called it out or said anything or intervened, although one man did invite me to go out of the room and have a conversation in the office until we were directed to return to our station. So when I returned to work the next night, a complaint had been received from the AMBOs co-located at that station, and that complaint had gone through our union representatives, and my station officer advised me that I'd be sent out on standby so that he could talk to the men about what had transpired. And the only concern I had to share with him at that point was make sure they know it wasn't me that complained. I was more scared of retribution for their being held to question than my needs as a young woman new to the job. I assured the officer I could handle myself, that I knew it was just, a few bad apples, and that I didn't want to rock the boat. I never heard anything further about it. No outcome was communicated to me, and I continued to try to fit in. Now, we could minimise here in many ways, and perhaps there are some valid points in that. But when we have new firefighters reach out to WAFA or other women who are mentoring and supporting them, expressing exactly the same sentiments today, I feel that we're not there yet. So I want you to help us continue the journey. No one of us can fix this tomorrow, but we can all start change today. And there is so much that is completely accessible to us right now. It can be a raindrop, and lots of raindrops together will make a puddle. So stay committed to improving your organisations. Go to the WAFA website and read the outcome statement. It's a fantastic document. The report on the QFES workshop and the feedback from delegates adds value to that. Show interest, learn and act. Listen to women, listen like you don't know anything. Put down your shield of expertise and expectation that you have that you stand on authority or your position or your uniform. Call it out. If you see something direct or indirect that makes one person or one group the other in order for the dominant to be above or better, then call it out. Support women, and each time you plan to offer support, check your privilege and your power. Is the action you're going to take what the person actually needs to grow? There's sometimes a risk that it's benevolent but maybe not helpful. So ask a woman, how can I help right now? Amplify. Tune your ear to the voices of those you don't hear regularly. The frequency of the dominant pitch is often perceived more readily. Women in particular experience the gender deafness of men in male-dominated groups. Echo a woman's good idea, with credit to her. Pay attention to who hasn't had a say and open the floor to all. And when a woman has a success, celebrate it, with her, a colleague, or within your wider organisation. And support WAFA. Sponsor the 2020 conference, it's in Adelaide next year. Generate membership, send delegates to the conference, support the WAFA board. Share the outcome statement or send the link to the website to someone you know who wants to support but doesn't know where to start. And keep showing up. This is not a simple short-term endeavour. WAFA has worked tirelessly and consistently for well over 10 years. Join that effort and stay the distance to effect the sustained cultural change that we need.